Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock and it is time to begin our regular scheduled Budget and Finance Committee. I will call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from October the 17th. Hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. Any corrections, deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item number 2, election of chairman and vice chairman effective 2020. The floor is open for nominations. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to nominate Alderman.
Okay, all right. That's,
What's his name? You get like the mayor now.
you got confused there, didn't you?
Well, I will second that because I think he's doing a wonderful job.
All right.
Are you ready for it?
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Also, then we'll need a nomination for vice chairman.
I'm gonna now put Scott PD in nomination for vice. Gotta get him off this bench.
All right.
Getting him in there.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
So you got a good teacher, so.
Alderman Speedy is vice chairman of the committee. Yeah, well,
We'll have to, we'll get team here.
I guess the first one is we start on time. Third, consideration of Resolution 2019-122, a resolution to revise the organizational chart within the purchasing department. You're up.
If I may give just a
Okay.
very brief introduction, the next 3 items are resolutions to revise organizational charts. They're fairly simple as these go because we're not asking for additional funds for these departments in the current fiscal year, but we are asking to change the organizational charts, which is a resolution. And Brian Wilcox, who is our purchasing manager, is going to briefly describe the change for the purchasing department.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. As you recall, the city's 2020 budget for the purchasing office includes an additional position, namely a procurement officer 4, thereby increasing the purchasing office's staffing from 3 full-time personnel, which were the procurement officer 1, procurement officer 3, and purchasing manager, to now having 4 personnel. We have now filled the new position of procurement officer 4 by promoting the procurement officer 3 from within the office, resulting in a vacancy in the position of procurement officer 3. Rather than fill the new vacancy for procurement officer 3 at the same pay grade as the last incumbent for that position, we wish to fill that vacancy at a slightly lower pay grade as a procurement officer 2, in order to reflect the breadth of duties and the anticipated duration of the learning curve for that position. So staff recommends approval of Resolution 2019-122 to revise the organizational chart within the purchasing department by replacing the position of procurement officer 3 with the position of procurement officer 2.
So you're going 1, 2, 4.
Exactly, instead of 1, 3, 4.
Any questions or comments on that? Let's go ahead and do a motion, and then we'll just recommend that to the full board then.
We recommend that to the full board.
Proper motion, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Done. Let's go to item 4, consider resolution 2019-124, resolution to revise the organizational chart within the Revenue Management Department. Is Lawrence going from 0 to a half?
I'm going from half to 0.
Half to 0.
Couldn't say that one.
Let me introduce to the committee my colleagues in the Revenue Management Department. Lawrence Sullivan's our Revenue and Licensing Manager, and Rita Morton is our Customer Service Supervisor. And Lawrence is going to just briefly explain the next organizational chart change, and then he'll also briefly, after answer any questions you may have, and if you act on that resolution, the next item is one that Lawrence will also address regarding city court.
Thank you. We have a fairly flat structure in revenue management, especially at the customer service level up front. And we had previously had a position of a lead customer service agent that would take over the reins when the manager and, the supervisor were out at a meeting with the board. So this returns us to that position without any change in the position, staffing, and/or any appropriation. It is inherently offers a leadership opportunity and improves our likelihood of succession planning, which we are pretty, it's important to us. It offers a career path step, and it allows us to formalize some responsibilities related to our monthly routine and our quality control. It again will offer coverage when the manager and/or the supervisor are not available to be able to meet with the senior leadership of the city, which has been happening from time to time that we need that support. So we would like to have this looked at favorably.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to recommend this to the full board.
Move for full board, please.
Proper motion, is there a second? Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Let's go to item 5. Consideration of Resolution 2019-125, a resolution to revise the organizational chart within the city court. Lawrence, you up again?
Mercy.
Yeah.
Once again, we cross-utilize some folks in our revenue management and our court clerk's office, and this is an opportunity for us to hire somebody that is a court person primarily to be in a 2-person office. It's very hard sometimes to staff a 9-hour day with just 2 people to do any vacation or any sick leave or anything like that. So we found a flexible position that's part-time. It'll be under 30 hours a week, remains part-time, but can be cross-utilized as well in Rita's area in the cashiering function. So this combined responsibility, it's the first time we've made it formal. We've had people that have done this dual role before, but they've been just the cashier level person. This recognizes the higher need in the court office for managing and doing some things in the court office for managing the flow of people through our court office, our clerk's office. And we request that you approve this one.
So you just have 2 over there now?
We have 2 full-time, and we have 2 part-time positions open. We don't always have that other part-time position filled. We've cross-utilized folks from revenue management to help over there. The court really needs their own to be trained more fully that can fill in over there when we need them, but can also be cross-utilized in revenue management.
Okay.
Part-time position.
You have someone already in-house that can move into that position?
We have a person, yes.
Yeah, okay, so it's not an outside new hire?
It is actually a new hire that's just come on board. but-
Okay.
But it's, I
Have
hope that's
certain
okay.
skills.
Yeah. Yes.
Entertain a motion to approve the organizational change within the city court.
I recommend that we move that to the board.
Proper motion, second.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Let's go to item 6.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Go to item 6, consideration of resolution 2019-123, a resolution to adopt budget goals for FY 2020 through 2021. Christine?
I'll go ahead and start
Eric?
with that.
Yes,
Okay.
It's hard to believe it, but we are actually starting our budget process for fiscal year '21. And we do that with establishing goals that help guide that process. And you have before you a series of goals that fit both specific financial goals. Those are pretty familiar in terms of our targets and our compliance with the board's policies and with a structurally balanced budget, et cetera. But also looking at some non-financial goals that look at our services and excellence in our services overall, and then some specifics around fiscal year '21. And I'll spend just a little bit of time talking about a couple of those key focus areas. For us, we are also due to look at an update of our compensation plan for the city overall. It seems like we just did it, but as we all know, we have a very competitive labor market in this region, and one of the pledges we made when we updated our compensation plan back in 2013-14 was that we would continue to look at that periodically and make sure that we're staying in a competitive position. So you may remember we set a target of being in the 85th percentile or better in our positions, and we want to maintain that overall, but also step back and look at the broad structure of our pay plans and make sure that it's in a good place. So that will be a focal point for us. I think an area that we've had on here before, but that I will mention as a specific area of emphasis for us is the impact of growth on our community continues to be an area of concern from our citizens. We heard that in our citizen survey, and we want to make sure that that continues to be an area we're focused in on. This will fall in this fiscal year, but we've got a meeting in late January scheduled with your colleagues on the county commission to have some further discussion with that. Again, our key efforts in supporting the implementation of our long-term plans from our strategic plan, Franklin Forward, all the way through our integrated water plan, our transportation plan, our parks master plan, our land use plan, open space plan. All of those elements need to be supported in annual operating budgets, or our plans don't really amount to much. So we want to make sure that what we're doing on the operating side is consistent with moving the ball forward on our number of long-term planning initiatives that have been approved by the board and our guidelines, our guideposts for our future. So that will remain an important element. I would emphasize that when we did the 5-year plan, 5-year outlook last year in the budget, this year was the tightest year of those 5 years. And so we will do more specific work on that, looking at our revenue projections and how things are looking, but I don't expect it to be much different than that. It will be a little tighter year. We will again embark on a 5-year outlook like we did in last year to make sure we can sustain and support the initiatives that are in that existing budget in that 5-year window, and give you a sense of the demands that are coming and how our revenue matches up with those when we look down the line. But these goals reflect compliance with the guidance you've provided us, both in financial policies and in long-term planning initiatives. And I would ask you to move this forward to the full board if you're comfortable. I'm glad to take any questions, comments, suggestions as we advance these goals.
Any questions of Eric?
I'm trying to see, were there any significant changes?
What really got added is a specific component around the compensation plan update. I did review our compliance with, and this has been in there the past about long-term planning initiatives and growth management strategies, but those are of particular emphasis, just because those are really important in how we maintain our position as a highly competitive community and a high level of quality of life components and providing services to our citizens at a high level as well. So all of those those aren't new concepts, but they're important, particularly important as we head into this budget.
I just like saying that we're continuing to improve.
Yes.
As we look at this, not
Absolutely.
a stagnant goals.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Christine?
I don't have anything to add to the city administrator. We're getting ready to start. We've already been working diligently, but the formal process is starting.
I have read some things recently saying that for the state, it might be more a leveling off year instead of growing at the rate that it's been growing. And so I've just wondered about, we don't have any specific projections for us, I don't guess.
Well, we have been monitoring and I'm probably, but you've been seeing the same thing that we have, the economists that the state uses for, in order to be able to make for the state funding board to make their revenue projections. They hear from Bill Fox over at UT Knoxville, and I believe now they have an ETSU professor and someone from Middle Tennessee as well. But I believe that was the same report, that they are pulling back on growth projections in the near term. And Michael, you, I know, have paid close attention to those as well.
It's, the Tennessee State Funding Board met earlier this month, and they'll meet again in December. And so the basis of the revenue model, which we'll bring to you in January, is going to be highly reflective, as it is every year, on the state's economists' best estimates. Usually what they do, of course, is to provide a range
Exactly.
between, it's sort of a hybrid and of 4 different economists. And in the last 3 to 4 years, that range for, and of course, we're most interested in sales tax growth in this community, has been between about 2.5 to 2.7 and a high of 4 to 4.5%, depending upon the economist and the model that they use. That has always made us feel confident that our 25-year historic average increase year over year of 3.51% in the local sales tax is sort of a right, prudent, conservative number. We're going to be heavily involved in building that revenue model over the course of the next 6 weeks. So when we come to you in January, our best guess, which will always be prudent and conservative, may very well be a little lower to start off, and then we'll just kind of see where we are when it comes to, you know, once we get into February and get the December numbers and see how we are trending year over year. This is not a surprise, though. I mean, we've been talking about for several years the possibility of eventually having a slowdown, and it has nothing to do with anything wrong in the U.S. economy. It's just that this is the longest continual period of economic growth in the history of the Republic. And it has to slow down at some point. So we're going to continue to monitor and give you our best guess come January.
And I did also notice that there was some reference to the metropolitan Nashville area, you know, saying that it could be one of the places where this showed up, just because of the rates that it, and I mean, when I say the metropolitan Nashville area, I mean, you know, including the surrounding counties, and that because so much had occurred here, and that it would not be surprising if this happened here.
Certainly something we'll factor in. You'll see a pretty in-depth review of the model in January, and then we'll continue to update it and may revisit it at a future budget and finance between January and when we issue the budget in the first part of May. So that's a key part, obviously, and we always start there and then circle back and look at it again several times during that process. And then when you get the budget, you'll see kind of how all that's been factored in. But these are factors that we are certainly considering and will be aware of as we kind of set those parameters for our budget.
And I had sent something saying, you know, really, it would have been good to also have been able to see at this particular point, I guess October, for the things that the city's already collected. You know,
Yeah.
I don't mean the things from the state or anything, which are, as we know, 2 months behind and everything.
Right.
But I knew that we should know, you know, at the 21st of the month, what we did in October in the city, and just to see about that. But as we also know, everything just kind of is up and down. It doesn't necessarily come out, but the same, even month to month versus, you know, the previous year. But I did, whenever I was looking back at this, I saw that on several things, we really were below not just the budget for this year, but for the comparison to the previous year.
And that's on those one-time type revenues, not necessarily the ongoing, but the one-time, such as impact fees and building permits, those that you
But-
pay once.
But just for, you know, we're getting close to, I mean, a quarter of the, well, actually, more than a quarter of the year, really. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Then, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this and send it to the full board for the board's approval and consideration. Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Item 7, acknowledge receipt of FY 2019 comprehensive annual financial report for the city of Franklin. All right.
If I may just introduce items 7 and 8 together.
Okay.
And as our guests are getting situated, we are, of course, required by the state of Tennessee to have an annual financial audit prepared by a qualified external auditor. And Crossland is our audit firm. And then this committee, the Budget and Finance Committee, sits as our audit committee. So every year it is, it's very important every year to have the faces of the audit firm come and report to you what they have found in the audit. It is, it's something that we don't take for granted, that we have an audit, a financial process and an audit process that has in the past been as clean as it has, but it certainly is it's a very important role of this committee for you to see the auditors who are in charge of reviewing our financials. We also have an audit prepared for the conference center, which we own along with Williamson County, and we do have representatives of the operators of the conference center, as well as Chartwell Hospitality, which owns the adjacent Marriott Hotel. And they are here because their audit will be presented by the auditors in just a moment. So let me introduce to you from Crossland the partners on our engagement, David Hunt and Jennifer Matternock. And this is a deep firm that has not only auditors who are come out and do field work, but they have peer review, and they're going to, I'm sure, explain a little bit about how that process works. But they have been working very closely with our staff. Of course, Mike Lowe, our comptroller, works very closely with the auditors to ensure that they receive everything that they need to do their work. And then I'm happy to work with them, and they realize I always bring them every year to meet Eric on the field auditor, so they know that any resource that they need to get the information to do our audit is available to them. I do want to introduce from the conference center, we have with us, and you've seen them, some of these folks fairly recently, but we have Matt Lahiff. He is the general manager for the Marriott Cool Springs, which operates our conference center. We have Randy Hansen, who is a financial officer with Chartwell Hospitality, the owner. We have Andy Duncan, who serves as the food and beverage director. He has also been an interim general manager a couple of times in his years over at the conference center and the Marriott Cool Springs. And we have Kristen Lamb, she is the controller for the Marriott Cool Springs, as well as with the conference center. So we welcome them here today also. So with that, I'll turn this over to David and to Jennifer.
Well, it's great to be with y'all this afternoon. As Christine said, we both serve as partners on this engagement. I actually serve as the pre-issuance reviewer, so a second partner review. We have a firm requirement that there are two partners that review every set of financial statements. Jennifer is the engagement partner, so she's the primary partner, and she oversees the field work, preparation, or review of the CAFR, everything. And then I just actually reviewed the CAFR and selected work papers just as a quality check. So we have that process in our total audit process. So. But with that, we've got several things we want to cover. We have a booklet called the Report to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen Results of the 2019 Audit. And then we have the draft financial statements for both the City of Franklin and the Conference Center at Cool Springs. And I'm going to cover the results of the 2019 audit booklet. And then Jennifer is going to hit some of the highlights in both the city's CAFR and the financial statements for the conference center. So we're going to start with this one. And what this is a booklet that enables us to fulfill the requirements under our generally accepted auditing standards, that we provide to you certain information relating to the conduct of the audit and the results of the audit. It's what is called under the auditing standards required communications. So we're required to present this to representatives of the governing body of the entity or the government or the organization, whatever it might be. And you serve in that role, obviously, as the Finance and Audit Committee. So looking at that, there's a letter that stresses the importance of what we believe is the importance of an open line of communication between we as the external auditors and you as that representative of the governing body as it relates to the audit. After that, on page 2, report on results. We have completed our audit and the audit process, and we are ready to issue our opinion. We have drafted and included here today an unmodified opinion. And what that represents is that based on our procedures, and what that opinion says is based on our procedures, we believe the CAFR, the financial results of the city, and the financial statements of the Coulis Springs Conference Center are fairly stated in all material respects. So based on our audit procedures, we believe, as presented here by management, that they are correct in the proper statement. So this is the type of audit opinion you would desire and the type that you've earned. So with that, other required communications, independence. We need to let you know that we as a firm are independent with respect to both the city and the conference center. We know of no conflicts of interest or anything that would impair that independence. Our auditing standards requires that we be independent, and we are. Engagement personnel, you can see our firm personnel that were involved in this process. During the course of the audit, Katie had a baby, and so Curtis one of our audit managers, Curtis Payne, kind of took that role from her in the oversight of the audit and various components of the audit. So you can add to this list Curtis Payne as well. On page 3, our responsibility as the external auditors is to audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, governmental auditing standards, and then the uniform guidance. The generally accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards are those that relate to your basic financial statements, your general disclosures, et cetera. And then the uniform guidance are procedures that relate to your federal awards. So any grants, federal grants that you get may come through the state, but if they're federal in nature, then we're required to test those for proper compliance to make sure that you've utilized those grant funds for the proper purpose. And we do that with a series of tests and selections, and we believe that it's our opinion that those grants were properly used and met all the compliance requirements. We had no findings as it related to that. Management judgments and accounting estimates on page 4. There are certain balances within the financial statements that require management to make estimates. Those would be something like the collectability of various receivables, not only property taxes, but other receivables. And then the useful lives of your capital assets. Your capital assets, such as buildings, equipment, et cetera, are required to be depreciated over their useful lives, and those useful lives are determined by management. We do look at those estimates to make sure that they're proper and they're the right lives for those types of assets, but that is an estimate that management comes up with. Valuation of donated capital assets, including streets, the fair value of derivative instruments, assumptions as they relate to your pension and OPEB obligations, and valuation of various investments. And so all these are estimates that management makes. We do test them. We do look at those for propriety and to make sure that they are correct and appear appropriate, and we believe that they do, and they are consistently applied from year to year as well. Page 5, significant accounting policies. These are the policies by which the city and the conference center record their transactions. They are all in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they are listed in Note 1 to the financial statement, so you can see what those policies are. There were really no significant new accounting standards that had to be adopted this year for the city or the conference center, so pretty much consistently applied, nothing new that had a significant impact that had to be adopted under the auditing standards. Audit adjustments, we had no audit adjustments and no uncorrected adjustments, so that speaks volumes as to the quality of your financial process and your accounting function and the people and the people who operate that function. When we don't have any adjustments, that's a good sign. And they do an excellent job. And it's not that many clients that we have that don't have any adjustments. So it's a very good thing to know. Alternative accounting treatments, there were none that were applied during the course of the year. Management consultations with other independent accountants. This would be a situation in which management maybe sought a second opinion on how to record a particular transaction or what the proper accounting treatment would be. It's okay if they do that, but they need to let us know that that happened so we can evaluate that accounting treatment. But to our knowledge, no such consultations occurred. Disagreements with management at the top of page 6, we had none as to what the proper accounting treatment would be or how to record a particular transaction. Issues discussed prior to our retention as independent auditors. There were no issues discussed with management that were dependent on our hire as the auditors. If there were, that would be a situation called opinion shopping, in which management came to us and said, hey, we'll make sure you guys are hired if you allow us to do something improper or anything like that. We need to let you know that that did not occur. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit, none. It went very smoothly from our standpoint. Hopefully from management's it did as well. Fraud and illegal acts, we noted no fraud or illegal acts during the course of the audit, which is also very important for you to know, and none was brought to our attention by management as well. And then we know of no additional documents that will contain your financial information outside of the CAFR and the financial statements. If that were to occur, that's fine. We just need to be notified so that we can make sure there's nothing in those documents that would conflict with the financial statements, in our opinion. On page 7, other information in the comprehensive financial report, there are other things in your CAFR other than things that we audit, such as certain statistical data, the transmittal letter, MD&A. So there are things in there that are not subject to audit, but we do read those to make sure that they do not conflict with the audited financial statements and their disclosures, and they do not. Areas of audit emphasis, you can see those areas there. Our audits are risk-based audits, and so we evaluate in our planning phase early on what the higher risk areas are in your financials, and we focus more of our attention on those areas. Now, we touch pretty much everything, but we spend more time on the higher risk areas, which would be larger dollar amount items in your financials, higher complex, more complex areas, things like that. So just to mitigate any potential error or adjustment that might be needed. Other procedures performed, uniform guidance, we spoke to that. So you did have federal awards of about $2.9 million, and so we applied our procedures to selected awards that were required to be tested, and we noted no findings in those. Next page, recent accounting pronouncements. These are the GASB statements, accounting pronouncements that are coming up in the next few years. There's a number of them listed here. Really, I'm not going to go through those, but they relate to various things: fiduciary activities, accounting for interest cost, majority equity interest, et cetera. Most of these are not going to have any kind of significant impact on the City of Franklin's financial statements. The leases, I believe you've purchased most of your leased items previously, and so that will not have a significant impact. Accounting for interest costs could, and what this standard does is require that interest costs related to your enterprise funds that would have been previously capitalized during construction periods requires it to become a period cost or an expense now, and it's no longer capitalized. So that is a difference that could have some impact down the road, but probably not one that would be super significant. The other ones really aren't going to affect you any way, shape, or form, really. Page 9, Conference Center, Cool Springs, we spoke to that, and so these required communications I'm covering are for both entities. And so those are the required communications. There is 2 attachments, Appendix A and Appendix B, and these are the representation letters for both the city and the conference center. And what this is a letter that we require management, financial management, to provide us at the end of the audit process, and it'll be on their letterhead. They will send this to us, and it represents a lot of the things that I spoke to, that they know of no fraud or illegal acts, that they believe the financials are fairly stated in all material respects, that they've provided us with everything that we've requested during the course of the audit, things like that. So representations they're making to us, and then we include that in our audit file as well. So that's the required communications. I know it's a lot of information in a hurry, but if anyone has any questions, be happy to try to address those. All right, thank you.
Any questions?
Just general question, in light of the news to our northern neighbors. At this point in time, would it be Crossland, or would this be more like department chair heads or finance staff that might say, hey, from previous year to this year, we've seen a significant decrease in this cash balance, or this TANF fund has a lot of cash that's not been spent? So where in the process, would that be more in the spring where we would review some of that?
Well, we certainly already have a process on our monthly reports that, which are, we consider the significant trendsetters, where we would, notify this committee if there was anything that was an interruption. I think one of the differences between what we're reading about and our budget is that the operating budget of some governments, in which your operating budget is primarily where you pay people and have ongoing costs, this one particular budget was balanced using some one-time shots of revenue. And those are apparently having some issues in their cases where, certainly we have a budget that's built primarily on sales taxes and some property taxes and things that are ongoing. So, but no, it would be a responsibility of staff through our city administrator to report.
So we provide you with monthly reports as part of this meeting, but quarterly reports in terms of the status, Mike always presents those to you as well. And those are fairly comprehensive in terms of looking at where the position of each fund is at any given, at the end of each quarter. Of course, our budget process always takes all that into account. And then this review by our outside auditors also will highlight any kind of significant
Right.
issues.
And our look is more of a historical look
Yes, theirs is-
versus an ongoing budget for the upcoming year kind of, look. But
And I ask those
if there's
questions
anything
maybe
that
for
pops
people
out,
watching at home,
Right.
like, how do we know that that's not gonna happen to Franklin in
Right.
2 years? Or-
And these are all things we don't just present to you, but are readily available on our website. We try to be very open and transparent in terms of how we track the information and share it back to you. And anytime you think you're not getting something you need, we work very hard to try to make sure it's provided on any level of frequency that you need it. But I feel pretty strongly that we try to give you a good picture at least every month, but certainly every quarter, and then every aspect along the way, along with what you do twice a month in board meetings. There's reflections of financial impacts and statements associated with items as you consider them as well. So.
And I would also mention, it's a little timely because of what we've been doing this calendar year, but certainly when our bond rating analysts review us, and they've reviewed us twice this year comprehensively for our bond issue in the spring and then our refinancing again, and they are always looking to see if you're paying ongoing operations with one-time shots of revenue. So we have had 2 reviews in this calendar year by Standard & Poor's and Moody's.
And one of your consistent budget goals is a structurally sound, where ongoing revenues and ongoing expenses are in balance. That has been a hallmark of our budgets the entire time I've been here. I can tell you that, and I'm sure before that as well.
I also want to say, in regards to our water and sewer, we have gone into situations where we have projected a few years in advance about how much we're going to
That's right.
increase those. And that's the other side of, I mean, that's the other part, the funds that are required to pay for themselves.
Yeah, good point.
That's an interesting, I appreciate that. That's an interesting comment, because when you look at the Tennessean and you see their Davidson County's daily operating budget is one thing and their water and sewer is something else, and because that affects Williamson County, because Brentwood and Knowlesville pump to Davidson County. So, for the sewer, not for the water, but for the sewer. So any increases that Davidson County has will affect Brentwood and maybe not, well, I guess all of them, well, biggest part of Knowlesville also.
No, it's.
Yeah,
Nolensville.
but, yeah, I read those with interest. And that's one of the reasons that we as a budget, we try to say, or we do say, they want to make sure that we don't commingle some fee or something other with water and sewer versus deleting that and making it up someplace else. Those are two separate accounts. Enterprise fund versus the daily operations that we go through on the other. So I always keep that in mind. Most everyone on the committee generally does also, but that's just some information for anyone that's watching or anyone that wants to ask questions. But that's an interesting comment that you made, an interesting line of questioning that we go down, because we don't want to be necessarily in the headlines of the Tennessean.
That's right.
Not for that.
Not for that, for sure.
Take the whole thing over.
So we're going to present, the
Okay, I'll start with the CAFR for the city of Franklin, and in my opinion, nothing in here will get you in the Tennessean. So.
again, good news.
All good news here. I'm going to start with our independent auditor's report, and I apologize, when we printed this, the page numbers dropped off here. So I'll go in order so as not to lose you in my presentation. On our independent auditor's report, which is starting in the financial section, as David said during his communications, our opinion is at the bottom, and it is unmodified, which is a clean opinion. After our opinion is the management discussion and analysis. This MD&A, it enhances what's in the basic financial statements, adds a summary as well as some additional information to give you more perspective on the operations of the city, as well as with the letter of transmittal. I do want to point out some additions that were made to the capital assets are listed on the second to the last page of the MD&A, some major capital additions. Net, there was a 27 million increase, and those are the projects that those went to. Some developer contributed assets, purchase of some police cars, as well as water and sewer. Where are they? On the second to last page of the MD&A for this. Big one. Yep, the big one. Yeah, I noticed that right as I was leaving.
Well, they were numbered, it's just when they ran it, it got cut off somehow
Yeah,
in the
it got
draft.
cut off.
Yeah, right.
It'll be on the final.
They've always been there before and always will be there in the future. It's just, that was a
Luckily,
technical
this is a
flaw.
draft, yep. Moving on to the basic financial statements. In the statement of net position, I'll go over some of the highlights. Total assets in 2018 was just over 1 billion compared to 1.1 in 2019. Some of those increases were the capital assets that I just mentioned. The receivables net increased approximately 13 million. That's primarily due to some loan proceeds from the revolving fund projects of approximately 10 million, plus a property tax increase of approximately 2 million. Below, in your deferred outflows of resources and in your liabilities, I want to point out your total OPEB liability. In the actuary report, in 2019, there was a change in assumptions for the aging that had a significant increase on your liability. Those aging tables that were used previously were thought to be outdated, so those were updated to more graded scale. So that increased your liability quite a bit, approximately 16 million for that change in assumption. That change is going to be amortized over 6 years. So in your statement of activities, that'll be 2.7 million per year over the next 6 years
And that's the agent
of the change in the assumption.
And if I may give the introduction back.
Aging of employees that participate in the OPEB plan.
Assumptions around, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
this is,
more older people are
Living longer.
living longer.
Right,
Well,
right.
this-
And they updated those estimates of longevity and lifespans, and those go into the calculation of this obligation, the lifespans of your participating employees, so.
and
that
this
changed.
does relate back to, in October, we did invite our actuary Finley to be with us, and we, what we had reported at that time was there was a review of all of our assumptions, but the one that created primarily most of this difference had to do with the aging table related to costs of medical expenses at different points in your life, and that the 2013 table that we are now using assumed that there was a greater difference in medical expenses for someone, for example, 50 years old compared to 64 years old. Our plan goes away at age 65, but that was the specific table
Right.
that we, when we realized that this change was going to occur, we had the draft reviewed by Crossland to make sure that they were at least, that they were in agreement, that they could
Right.
see, they could understand what the actuary was recommending.
And I will say, the city of Franklin's not the only one. Finley does the vast majority of the larger governments within the state of Tennessee, and which we audit 4 out of the top 10 cities in the state. And we've seen that kind of across the board. So that's not unusual to Franklin. That's pretty much been the case. You know, that assumption change was made for all these governments.
But this was a table that, as Jennifer mentioned, had been used for a number of years, and we are now using a 2013 table.
And the updated assumptions in that table are regarded as well accepted in the industry, I guess I'd say. So we feel comfortable that what we have moved to is solid and appropriate, and it's what we need to be based on, so.
And this is the one that's just on the people in a certain time, I mean, for a certain time frame, because they'll all be moving to, well, either becoming 65 and getting off of it, or I guess they'll be gone because there are no new people can tie into this. Is that
Now,
right?
this is, the plan is still, it's still an open plan. Now, we have.
This is for the medical. that
I know-
folks have
I know
been-
it
yeah,
is.
okay.
Yeah, this is still considered, this is not related to the closing of the
Okay.
single employer pension plan.
Okay.
This is an open retiree health plan. We,
The one that we looked at at our last meeting.
yes, yes, ma'am, this is the plan in which the city subsidizes the insurance premium at 40% for eligible employees between when they retire and when they reach age 65. And so we, at any given time, perhaps have around 40 retirees, because there is a significant retiree contribution. And, but certainly it gives them a place to purchase insurance until they reach age 65. It's not a plan that goes on, such as a pension plan for your entire lifespan.
I do want to point out the liability is a gap adjustment. The city has been on a pay-as-you-go basis with the OPEB plan, and that remains the same. The contributions to the plan in 2019 were approximately 450,000, compared to last year, there were 645, and that just ranges depending on the claims that are made during the year. Also in deferred outflows of resources for pensions, that's also an actually determined number. Included in that number is prepayments of 1.5 million for the 2020 contributions, and those will be recognized in the next fiscal year. They'll reduce your liability. In the liabilities, your bonds had a net increase, about 32 million. There was a new issue of 23 million during the year, as well as a refunding for the Build America bond that occurred, and that came at a premium of 8.4 million, which is being amortized. In the water and sewer funds, there's 2 state revolving fund loans for approximately 11 million that occurred during the year. Payments were approximately 39 million towards all of those, including approximately 800,000 for the capital leases, and those were paid off during the year. In your net position, your ending net position is 824 million for the year. Of that, 664 is invested in your capital assets. You also have some restrictions that are listed here on your net position, and there's unrestricted net position of 107 million. 75 is available for use by the governmental activities, and 32 for business type activities. In the statement of activities, in your general revenues, towards the bottom, your property taxes increased approximately 2% due to growth in the city, and your sales tax increased approximately 6%, reflecting a strong economy during the last fiscal year. Net change in net position was 37.5 million compared to 40 million in 2018, reflecting another strong year for the city. On the next page is your balance sheet for the governmental funds. These are your fund financial statements. Your fund balances are positive for all of your all your funds, which is a requirement of the state. The ending for the total government funds is 148 million. This increased approximately 42 million from 2018. The general fund makes up 53 million of that, and that increased 3.7 million. Most of the funds had a positive net change in fund balance. One I will point out, and that's towards the back after your footnotes, was the stormwater fund did end in a loss of 370,000 approximately.
I will say, though, your general fund has a very strong fund balance.
It does, very strong.
And not only, the fact that it's a large fund balance in relation to your total assets, but the bulk of it, almost all of it is unrestricted, which is good as well, so.
Does that match up with 4 of your top 10 cities?
It exceeds a few, trust me.
Yeah.
But we audit a lot of governments, not just, we audit large ones like that, but we audit smaller ones as well, and so it's a large part of our practice, and it's something that we have feel like we have a lot of expertise in.
In the notes, there weren't any new requirements in the footnotes this year. They have all been updated for the current year activity. I wasn't going to go over them in detail unless you have any questions on any of them. I do want to point out, and this is towards the back in the supplementary schedules, there is a new schedule that was required this year by the state of Tennessee, and that comes after your schedule of bond and note indebtedness. It's the schedule of changes in long-term debt by individual issue. And the finance department has prepared this schedule. It includes all the requirements that the state has asked for them to put into this schedule. It includes pretty much all the information you need on every single debt issue that the city has. And in the back, on the last 2 pages, is our summary of our findings and question costs. As Dave David mentioned, we did our audit under the government auditing standards as well as the uniform guidance, and we did not have any findings. And this summary here is reiterating that we didn't have any during 2019. Our major program was the Federal Transit Cluster. Any questions?
Any questions of Jennifer?
So overall, I mean, I think it would be our take that a very strong year and a very good ending financial position for the city. as a year.
Good to hear.
Thank you, we have a great team.
Yes,
Yes, you
you
do.
have an excellent
Make
team.
us look good.
Yeah. It's a very large report, and to have no audit adjustments is very impressive.
Confident there, you think she would have a comment? Did she take a little nap?
I'm trying to hear.
Oh, yeah.
I can't find it in the book.
Are we ready for item 8?
I believe Jennifer's ready to go to the conference center if there's no other.
I'll go over the conference center next. Starting with the independent auditor's report, and I do have page numbers on this one. On pages 3 and 4, our opinion's on the second page. It is also an unmodified opinion. And for the conference center, they don't have federal funding, so we perform this audit under the Yellow Book or the government auditing standards only. On the statements of net position on page 12, your total assets, 11.2 million compared to 11.3 in the previous year. Really, that's primarily due to a decrease in the capital assets, which has increase in the accumulated depreciation of $445,000. There was also purchases of approximately $300,000 during 2019. Those purchases were for stackable chairs and also some stucco that was refinished on the building. Cash also increased from $476,000 to $581,000. That's primarily due to the operating results as well as cash collections, positive cash collections during the year. Total liabilities decreased. That's due to timing and also a result of the positive cash collections. Net position is just over 11 million. 10.4 of it is invested in capital assets. That restricted net position equals your restricted cash balance above, and that cash is restricted for future capital expenditures. And then your unrestricted net position is $272,000. In the statement of revenue expenses and changes in net position on page 13, operating revenue was 7.8 million compared to 7.4 in the previous year, increased approximately 400,000. The conference center overall had less events, 644 compared to 671 in the previous year. However, the events that they had were larger dollars, a lot more corporate events, the largest event being from Dave Ramsey Conference. In your operating expenses, the largest expense being the banquet and catering. That's up due to the increase in the operating revenues, primarily in the food costs. There's also some expenses that decreased, the sales and marketing, as well as the catering management fee and the insurance. And primarily that was really due to the change in the management company, just the structure from the switch in those. Operating income, 527,000 compared to 378 in the previous year. Other income consists of cancellation fees, and that's going to fluctuate yearly. Income before distributions was 558,000. The net distributions to the city and the county during 2019 were 609,000, and those are split 50-50. For a decrease in net position of 51,000. And just to point out, those distribution, that was about 5-6% of net position. In your statement of cash flows, increase in cash, just over $1 million was from operating activities. Just had a really good year with cash being collected timely. Cash is being used for financing activities for the distributions between the city and the county, and also towards purchases of capital assets for a net change in cash of $105,000. With the footnotes, no changes in these footnotes from last year either. I do, on the last few pages, our government auditing standards report. We did not have any findings for the conference center either. We're reporting no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and we had no compliance findings. So the conference center also had a very good year.
So the net distribution to local government, 609 versus 443. So half of that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we do record those funds into our hotel motel fund.
And does the county get this report? We'll take it only.
We do make sure they receive.
Their commission will not.
Yeah, we take the lead in this process as sort of from a management perspective, but it's shared with
So
them.
they
and
don't,
they're our
so the
equals
county
in
doesn't,
order.
the county does not do
This audit is on behalf of both city and
most,
county.
okay. Any questions, comments?
So I guess actually this may answer my question from last month. The cost is probably that 16.6 million. We could say it was the cost of the conference center. Now it's valued at about 10 million after depreciation. It looks like that's where we're insuring it for, about 9.5 million. Is that probably a fair statement?
Well, when you use the term valued, I'm not sure. This is
Cost.
historical cost,
Historical
less
cost.
depreciation.
Right,
So
book
it-
value.
Yes, book
Not fair
value,
market.
not fair value. So I just want to make sure everybody's
Yeah.
clear on that, yeah.
GAAP requires us to record it at historical cost.
And then take the depreciation off of it.
So then my question would be, when we know it's book value, the 9.5, are we underinsured maybe in the conference center if we're only insuring at the book value versus fair market value?
Well, I would think replacement costs would be substantially more than book value, but that would have to be assessed by someone other than accountants.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to look at.
Any other comments on either the Cool Spring Conference Center or the city's comprehensive report? If not, let's go to item 9. Report on, in regards to issuance of Series 2019 C&E General Obligation refunding bonds.
If I may ask before we do need to move these to the full board, and we would like to move these to the December 10th meeting. If we could have a recommendation from this committee to move both of these reports
Okay, yes, I'm
to
sorry.
the full board.
So move it for a vote. December.
Proper
Yes,
motion,
ma'am.
second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
Second with Scott?
Yes.
We did 7 and 8 together.
Item 9. Christine, you're up again.
I am, and we did want to, just to circle back on the bond refinancing, which I will I'll tie this in just quickly with what we just heard from the auditors. We did disclose this refinancing as a subsequent event in the notes section of the draft of the financial report. We do disclose that we did, that our board approved refinancing the 2007 and 2010 bond issues, and that we will be closing before the end of the calendar year. Just quickly, we did on November the 5th accept competitive bids from underwriters, and we awarded each series of bonds. We had 2 series of bonds to the firms with the lowest interest cost. The Series C was the tax-exempt bonds. The final par amount of $29,245,000. We had 8 qualified bids received on November 5th, and we awarded to the low bidder Bank of New York Mellon for a true interest cost of 1.73%. This is the bond issue that we did restructure. We reduced the final maturity from 2037 to 2032, and this reflects refinancing both the 07 bonds, variable rate bonds issued through the Public Building Authority, as well as refinancing the 2010 bonds, which were issued under the federal program, the ARA program, the recovery program at that time, that was for road projects. We did also issue a Series D taxable bond issue of final par amount of $2,305,000. We had 8 qualified bids as well, and we awarded to Robert W. Baird was the low interest rate. The Series D represents a portion of the termination costs for the interest rate swap agreement, and so it was a smaller bond issue with a true interest cost of 2.05%. We, at the same time, on November 5th, terminated the interest rate swap agreement, and we did negotiate a savings of 8% of the fair market value that was calculated on November the 5th. And so we did close yesterday. We got closed yesterday afternoon, and we have terminated the interest rate swap, and we have closed the Series C and the Series D bonds. We did result in debt service savings of $3.1 million when everything was said and done, and we've got some cleanup items that we'll be taking care of here in the next few weeks, but we're glad to be closed, and we appreciate the support. It's been a year's worth of work for this committee to have to hear us talk about these opportunities, but we appreciate your support and your encouragement, and we're glad to be the day after closing. So, any questions you may have?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman, is that, did you say we saved about $3 million?
3.1 million.
For the taxpayers?
Yes, ma'am.
In the city of Franklin?
Yes,
Okay.
that is the difference between the debt service on the original 2 bond issues and the debt service on our new bond issues, and that also has already been taken into account, the $2.5 million that we that you put into paying a portion of the swap termination in cash. So we actually will be we'll have more differences in annual costs because we were able to pay $2.5 million up front, and certainly we also we won't have $2 million annually in debt service expense from 2033 to 2037 that the board can look for capital or operating other needs that will be more apparent as you get closer in that time
So
frame.
it's savings and you retiring debt earlier than.
And I just want to make sure our listeners at home and our taxpayers would know that, these decisions is really benefiting all of us.
Well, we
So
do appreciate that.
Pearl wants the Tennessee to cover that.
Yes.
And also eliminated a lot of potential unknown risks
Yeah.
that were out there, and we got it
There's some
fixed and
things on
locked
the
in.
horizon that we won't have to deal with because we've done this.
That's also those are the intangibles, but certainly we're glad to be able to not be looking at the unknowns on a couple of different aspects of this structure. So we want to report the closing, and we're thankful to be here today. So
Why don't, and you may have, why don't you put this on the workshop at least for December the 10th?
Just do a report about this?
Just
a brief report.
Just a 2 or 3 minute
Yeah.
report. And, but the biggest thing is the refinancing and the savings of a $3.1 million in savings and early retirement of the bonds themselves. So that's the 2 things. And just we'll hit that high spot as much as we can.
Sure.
Yes, sir, we can do
We'll
that.
give you a report at the 10th on the work
Okay.
session there.
Any other comments on the refinancing? Well, we don't need a motion, I don't think, to report. Item 10, monthly reports for November 2019. Mr. Lowe, you're up again.
Good afternoon. It was good news. It was good news. And we thank you, the board and management, and the department teams and the team in finance for all they do.
Yes.
With the monthly reports, what we try to do, and it got mentioned earlier, is we try to let everyone know where we stand as we go each month. And that includes like some of the things that were said in audit, some positive numbers. Like if you look at local sales tax for the year, it's up 5.2%. If you look at gasoline taxes, it's up 6%. The conference center, the profit for September is higher than, say, the profit for last year. The other purpose of having the monthly reports is to also let you know that there are numbers that we're monitoring. Because just like Alderman Peterson, you had mentioned on development fees, we knew last year we were comparing to a record year. Now what's happening is we're comparing to that other year. And so in essence, we're seeing some decreases compared to last year. And sometimes we even see some results we may not have been expecting, because even though our facilities tax is less, the county's facility tax is actually more. And the other thing that I might want to cover that's not necessarily on this page is we try to let everyone know where we stand if there is something we notice. And Alderman Speedy, you asked about cash, and near the end of last year, we reported that we noticed transit did not have their grant monies in to be able to close on a cash basis. And what happened was, it actually happened, they got the monies that were needed to close, but those were the kind of things we needed to report, because there was even a budget amendment from the general fund that could have been up to $1 million if that had not resolved itself. So in essence, those are the kind of things we would report to let you know that we were seeing something that needed to be addressed. And that was all I had on monthly reports, unless there were any questions.
Any questions? Let's go to item 11 then. Consideration of 2020 meeting schedule.
We did attach to this agenda, as well as I did put a hard copy at your places. We looked at the calendar for 2020 to look at whether we can go ahead and plan for the dates for this committee, the best we would know now to help you plan and for us certainly to be prepared. This committee typically has not met during the month of July. We have in recent years met a little earlier in the day during budget, the 3 months or the 4 months of budget season.
Still do that.
And there are 3 months that we are a little off schedule because of a few, couple of reasons. The month of March and October, we're asking for consideration to move due to some training that's done by the Tennessee Government Finance Officers Association, as well as to combine the November and December meetings that similar to what we did here today, except next year we're looking at doing that just right after Thanksgiving rather than, this was the earliest, Mike, we've ever met to do this. So we've been feverishly getting ready to be here on November 21st, but it is a pretty tight time frame to have the audit report finished by November 21st, but the lateness of Thanksgiving, did that. So we would ask if there are any proposed either changes or if the times are acceptable, and certainly if something needs to be done differently in consultation with the city administrator. We just wanted to go ahead and propose a schedule.
Any questions? Any questions on the times, dates? I mean, with reason, with the advertising, if we need to change one of them, we can change one of them. I mean, it's not they're there just for our scheduling purposes, but they're not necessarily chiseled in stone, so. All right, let's go ahead. We'll acknowledge that we've received them. Other business?
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman.
That's it. Is the mayor celebrating the $3.1 million savings?
He is actually at the National League of Cities Conference in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh,
So he's
okay.
participating in that. I don't know, I think that might be the first or second time he's been to that. I don't know. I think he went last year as well. So that's where he's at.
Okay.
He's learning some things in San
Learning
Antonio about city government from that perspective.
San Antonio is a pretty city to visit. I guess the last thing on there is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Proper motion, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Well, thank you for getting us out here.
Motion and second was, I'm sorry.
Motion was Pearl, second was Scott.
Okay.
We gotta get them.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have a request.
okay.
I would like to speak, first for the 3-point-whatever million for some of my projects.
No, well,
I'm saving that.
that's, doesn't exactly work that way.
West Main, that's her bridge.
I think we're already doing the West Main Bridge, so
Yeah, it's on there.
we're gonna use it.
Going to first year OPEB liability.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Well, we get it over time as well as those obligations. Yeah, it was a huge number.